Winchester to Crow's Lake in the dead of winter, determined to punish her for refusing an arranged marriage. As they pushed her toward the frozen water, wealthy cattle baron Luke McCall was riding home from a long drive. He heard her screams echo across the snow-covered valley. Without hesitation, he spurred his horse toward the commotion, arriving just as they threw her into the icy lake. Luke dove in after her, pulling her from death's grip. But saving her life was just the beginning. As dawn broke over the Montana wilderness, two strangers would forge a bond stronger than the forces trying to tear them apart. But what dark secrets drove these settlers to such desperate measures, and how far would they go to keep those secrets buried? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. A bitter wind whipped through the streets of Miller's Creek as Sarah Winchester hurried along the wooden sidewalk, clutching her mother's shawl tight around her shoulders. Behind her, whispers followed like autumn leaves, sharp and brittle. "Miss Winchester!" Elder Thompson's voice cut through the morning air. "A moment of your time." Sarah's fingers instinctively went to her mother's gold ring, worn on a chain beneath her dress. She turned, forcing her face into the pleasant mask she'd perfected over the past 10 years. "Elder Thompson." She dipped her head respectfully, though her heart hammered against her ribs. The tall, severe man approached with measured steps, his silver pocket watch chain swinging with each movement. "The council has reached a decision." His voice carried the weight of assumed authority. "You'll marry James Blackwood come Sunday?" Sarah's world tilted. I don't understand. It's been 10 years since your mother's passing." Thompson's eyes narrowed. "You've refused every suitable match we've proposed. The community needs stable families, Miss Winchester, young women living alone." He paused, significance heavy in his tone. "It breeds talk. My father's house is community property now," Thompson cut in, "unless you can produce the deed your mother claimed existed." His lip curled slightly, the one she spoke of before her unfortunate accident. Sarah's throat tightened. The deed. Always the deed. Her mother's last words echoed in her memory. "The proof is in the—" But death had stolen the rest, leaving Sarah with only fragments of truth and a mystery she couldn't unravel. "I won't marry him." The words escaped before she could stop. "Them." Thompson's face hardened. "This isn't a request, Miss Winchester. The council has spoken. Sunday." He leaned closer, his voice dropping. "Don't make us question your mother's judgment in raising you. There are those who still wonder about her influences." Sarah's hand crept to the hidden medicine pouch beneath. Her shawl, her mother's last gift, filled with sacred herbs and wrapped in beaded leather that spoke of a heritage the settlers preferred to ignore. "My mother was a good woman," she whispered. "Your mother was what she was." Thompson straightened. "Sunday, after services, don't disappoint us." He strode away, leaving Sarah trembling in the cold morning air. She waited until he rounded the corner before ducking into the alley between the general store and the blacksmith shop. Her fingers shook as she pulled out her mother's ring, studying the intricate design she'd memorized years ago. Curves and lines that seemed random to most eyes, but which her mother had once told her held a map to the truth. "I won't let them win, Mother," she whispered, touching the ring to her lips. "I promise." The rest of the day passed in a blur of preparations she had no intention of completing. Sarah moved through the motions of selecting fabric for a wedding dress she would never wear, all while her mind raced through possibilities of escape. But where could she go? The nearest town was 3 days' ride, and winter was settling in with a vengeance. As dusk approached, she returned to her small house on the outskirts of town, the home her father had built with his own hands, where her mother had filled every corner with love and secrets. Sarah lit the lamps and moved through the familiar rooms, touching worn furniture, tracing the patterns in the wooden walls where her height had been marked year after year. In her mother's old trunk, beneath layers of quilts and memories, she found what she was looking for, a small, leather-bound journal, its pages filled with her mother's elegant script. Sarah had read it countless times, searching for clues, but tonight something caught her eye, a passage she'd overlooked. The settlers fear what they don't understand, but the land remembers. The lake holds secrets deeper than its waters. The lake, Crow's Lake. Sarah's heart quickened. Her mother had often walked there, especially in the weeks before her death. Could the deed be hidden somewhere along its shores? A knock at the door startled her from her thoughts. Sarah quickly hid the journal and smoothed her skirts before opening the door to find Martha Blackwood, her soon-to-be mother-in-law, standing on her porch with a basket. "Sarah, dear." Martha's smile didn't reach her eyes. "I brought you some of my wedding preserves. Every bride should have something sweet to start her new life." Sarah accepted the basket, her thanks automatic and hollow. Martha pushed past her. Into the house, her sharp eyes taking in every detail. "James is a good man," Martha said, running a finger along a dusty shelf. "He'll provide well. Of course, you'll need to learn to keep a proper home." The criticism in her voice was clear, "and will help you put aside some of your mother's more unusual ways." Sarah's grip tightened on the basket. "My mother taught me everything I need to know about keeping a home." "Did she now?" Martha turned, her face hard. "Did she teach you about loyalty to your community? About knowing your place?" She moved closer. "About keeping secrets buried where they belong." In that moment, Sarah knew. The council, the forced marriage, all of it, they weren't just trying to control her. They were trying to erase every trace of her mother's truth. After Martha left, Sarah waited until full dark. She packed a small bag with essentials, tucked her mother's journal inside her coat, and slipped out into the night. The wind had picked up, carrying the promise of snow, but she didn't feel the cold. Her mind was fixed on Crow's Lake and whatever secrets it might hold. She never made it to the shore. The council chamber in the back of Miller's Creek Church held 12 men that evening, though only 5 would be remembered in the town records. Elder Thompson stood before the crackling fireplace, his shadow stretching long across the wooden floor like an accusing finger. "She's been searching." Thompson's voice carried the weight of grave news. "Martha found her mother's journal today." James Blackwood shifted in his chair, moonlight from the high window catching the silver cross, pinned to his lapel. "Then we move tonight, before she finds it. And risk questions, rumors?" Elder Roberts, the oldest among them, shook his head. "We've maintained order here for 15 years, since we first settled this valley." "Order built on lies," Reverend Shaw whispered, but only Thompson heard him. The young Reverend was new to their circle, still uncertain about the weight of necessary sins. Thompson pulled a leather folder from his coat. "The Territorial Governor's Office has approved our petition. Once the marriage is recorded, all of Catherine Winchester's property transfers to her daughter's husband." He looked pointedly at James. "And through him, to the council's authority. If she agrees to marry." Reverend Shaw's voice was stronger now. "She seemed quite determined this morning." "She'll agree." James Blackwood's smile held no warmth, "or she'll face the consequences of her mother's choices." The room fell silent, remembering another winter night, 15 years ago, when Catherine Winchester had threatened to expose their carefully constructed lie. The accident that followed had been regrettable, but necessary. "The land deeds?" Roberts asked. Thompson patted the folder. "Safe, and the Territorial Office has no record of Catherine Winchester's claims. As far as they're concerned, this valley was empty when we arrived. No natives, no prior claims." He turned to James. "Once you're married, you'll sign these new documents. Everything will be legally binding. And if she's found something," James leaned forward, "if her mother left her proof, then we'll handle it." Thompson's voice was ice. "Just like we handled Catherine." The Reverend stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. "Surely we're suggesting nothing." Thompson cut him off. "We're protecting our community, our families, our futures." He moved to the window, looking out at the snow-covered street. "Do you know what would happen if the truth came out?" If people learned that this land was purchased with blood money, that the natives who died here weren't killed by disease but by poison in the wells? God help us, the Reverend whispered. God helps those who help themselves. Thompson turned back to the room. Catherine Winchester's daughter has her mother's blood. Her instincts. She'll never stop looking unless we stop her. James stood, straightening his coat. I'll gather some men. We'll catch her at the lake. The lake? Roberts asked. I had Martha mention it. Planted the seed about her mother spending time there. James smiled again, cold and calculated. Sarah's predictable. She'll go looking for answers tonight. Thompson nodded. No witnesses. Make it look like an accident. A young woman, distraught about her upcoming marriage, walking on thin ice. What about the journal? The Reverend asked, his face pale. Destroy it. Destroy everything. Thompson's voice was final. By morning, Miller's Creek will mourn another tragic accident, and our secrets stay buried. The men filed out into the night, their decisions heavy in the air. Only Thompson and the Reverend remained. This is necessary, Thompson said, seeing the younger man's distress. Sometimes sin serves a greater purpose. And what purpose is that? Shaw asked. Thompson placed a hand on his shoulder. Progress, Reverend. Civilization. The native girl, Catherine Winchester married, wasn't fit to raise a child in our community. Her daughter carries that same wild blood. Better to end it now than let it poison another generation. Outside, James Blackwood and 4 other men mounted their horses, rifle stocks gleaming in the moonlight. They turned toward Crow's Lake, where Sarah Winchester was about to learn the price of asking too many questions. Thompson watched them go, then carefully recorded the evening's meeting in the town ledger. But he wrote only 5 names, documenting a simple discussion about winter preparations and church repairs. The truth, like so many truths in Miller's Creek, would exist only in whispers and nightmares. The church bell tolled 9 times, each strike echoing across the valley like a hammer driving nails into a coffin not yet built. Luke McCall urged his horse along the snow-dusted trail, the setting sun painting the Montana sky in shades of amber and blood. Behind him, the last wagon of his cattle drive creaked through the darkness, loaded with the profits of a successful season. 15 years of building his empire had taught him to trust his instincts, and tonight something felt wrong in the familiar valley. Boss? Charlie Rodriguez, his trail foreman, rode up alongside. Men are wondering why we're pushing through instead of making camp. Luke's eyes scanned the horizon, taking in the distant lights of Miller's Creek. Something's stirring, Charlie. Can't you feel it? Charlie, who'd ridden with Luke since they were both broke cowboys dreaming of their own spread, knew better than to question his boss's hunches. He'd seen those instincts save them from rustlers, blizzards, and worse. Ramsey's gang? Charlie asked, referring to the outlaws they'd heard about 2 towns back. Luke shook his head, absently touching the silver brand hanging from his watch. Chain, his first cattle brand, now worn smooth from years of worry. Different kind of trouble, town trouble. They'd passed through Miller's Creek before, driving cattle to the Northern Territories. Luke had always sensed something off about the place, too neat, too proper, like a wound hidden under clean bandages. Remember that widow? Luke asked. The one with the herb garden about 10 years back. Catherine something. Helped Jake when the fever took him. Charlie crossed himself, remembering how the woman's medicines had saved one of their best hands. Winchester, Catherine Winchester. Luke's voice was distant. Next drive-through they told us she'd died. Accident at the lake. Mighty convenient accident, way I heard it. Charlie kept his voice low. She was asking questions about land rights, Indian claims. Luke nodded. He'd done his own asking. After that, quiet inquiries that led nowhere but taught him plenty about Miller's Creek and its powerful council of elders. The town had grown rich too fast, its prosperity built on foundations that didn't quite add up. The trail wound down into the valley, and Luke's horse, a big bay named Thunder, suddenly tossed his head, nostrils flaring. Up ahead, riders were moving through the trees near Crow's Lake, their lanterns bobbing like malevolent fireflies. 5 men, Charlie murmured, his hand dropping to his gun. 6, Luke corrected, spotting another shadow moving through the darkness. And one of them's following something or someone. He'd seen hunting parties before, for game, for outlaws, for runaway slaves in his Texas days. This had the same feel, predators pursuing prey. "Charlie, get the men settled at the north pasture. I'm going to have a look." "Boss, just a look." Luke checked his rifle, then his revolver. "But if you hear trouble, we'll come running." Charlie wheeled his horse around but paused. "Luke, remember what my grandmother used to say about crow calls at night?" Luke smiled grimly. "Death riding on winter winds." "Watch yourself, boss." Luke waited until Charlie was gone, then guided Thunder off the trail. The big horse moved silently. Through the snow, years of working cattle, making him sure-footed, even in the treacherous footing. The moon broke through the clouds, and Luke caught a glimpse of a figure running between the trees. A woman, her dark hair streaming behind her like a banner. She was heading for the lake, probably thinking she could lose her pursuers along the shore. "Fool's choice," Luke muttered. The lake would be treacherous this time of year, its surface a patchwork of thick and thin ice. He'd seen what happened to cattle that trusted winter water. The woman stumbled, and Luke recognized her then, Catherine Winchester's daughter. He'd seen her in town on his last drive through, standing proud despite the whispers that followed her. Now she was running for her life. And Luke had a sick feeling he knew why. Thunder sensed his tension and gathered himself, ready to run. But Luke held him back, years of experience telling him to wait, to watch, to understand the situation before rushing in. The riders were spreading out, herding the woman toward the lake's edge. Their leader sat his horse like a man used to being. Obeyed, moonlight glinting off a silver cross at his throat. "Nowhere left to run, Sarah," the man called, his voice carrying across the snow. "Best make this easy on yourself." Luke had heard enough. He turned Thunder toward the lake, keeping to the shadows. Whatever was happening here, it wouldn't end in another convenient accident. Not tonight. A scream split the darkness, terror and defiance mixed in equal measure. Luke dug his heels into Thunder's flanks, and the big horse leaped forward, hooves throwing up plumes of snow as they raced toward the sound of a life about to be broken or saved. Sarah's feet hit the ice first, then her knees, the impact shooting pain through her body. Behind her, boots crunched on the frozen surface of Crow's Lake. Rough hands seized her arms, dragging her upright. "Your mother made the same choice." James Blackwood's voice was close to her ear, running to the lake, looking for proof that never existed. "She found it, didn't she?" Sarah twisted in his grip. "That's why you killed her." The slap echoed across the ice. Sarah tasted blood, but she smiled through it. "Truth hurts, James? Get her to the deep part," Thompson ordered from the shore. "Make it look right." The ice groaned beneath their feet as they dragged her forward. Sarah clutched her mother's journal inside her coat, knowing it would sink with her. Maybe someone would find it in spring, when the ice melted. Maybe then the truth would. The first gunshot split the night like thunder. "That's far enough." A voice she didn't know, deep and steady as stone. Sarah turned her head. A rider sat at the lake's edge, his rifle aimed at James. The moon caught his face. Strong features, eyes hard as Montana winters. "This doesn't concern you, stranger," Thompson called. "Town business. Murder's everybody's business." The rider dismounted smoothly, keeping his rifle trained on the group. "Let her go." James laughed, but Sarah felt his grip tighten. "You're outnumbered, friend. Ride on." "Luke McCall," the stranger said, taking a step onto the ice, "own the Double M Ranch north of here. And I've got 20 cowboys just over that ridge who'll be mighty interested in seeing justice done." Sarah felt the men's hesitation. The Double M was the largest spread in the territory. Luke McCall's name carried weight. "She's a murderer." Thompson tried. "Killed her own mother." "Funny." McCall took another step. The ice creaked. "I remember Catherine Winchester. Remember how she died too. Remember a lot of things about this town that don't add up." James, one of the other men whispered. Maybe we should. Everything happened at once. James shoved Sarah away, reaching for his gun. She slid across the ice as rifles barked in the darkness. Something hot sprayed her face, blood from one of James's men, caught by McCall's bullet. Then the ice gave way. The crack was like a rifle shot. Sarah felt the surface tip beneath her, heard screams and splashing. Cold water punched the air from her lungs as she plunged into the lake. Darkness. Silence. Her mother's journal slipped from her numb fingers, disappearing into the black depths. Sarah clawed for the surface, but couldn't find the hole she'd fallen through. The cold was like knives in her chest. Something grabbed her coat, a hand strong and sure. She was pulled upward back into the freezing air. Luke McCall's face appeared above her, his arm locked around her waist as he dragged them both towards solid ice. "Breathe!" he ordered. "Stay with me!" More gunshots, screaming. Sarah saw James and his men scrambling across the ice, leaving their wounded behind. Thompson's voice rose above the chaos. "The council will hear about this, McCall." "Make sure they do," Luke shouted back. He pulled Sarah onto firm ice, shrugging out of his heavy coat to wrap around her shoulders. "Tell them Luke McCall's taken an interest in Miller's Creek. Tell them things are going to change." Sarah's teeth chattered so hard she could barely speak. "The journal. My mother's. Lost now." Luke lifted her easily, carrying her toward his horse. "But maybe not the only copy." She stared up at him through ice-crusted lashes. Why did you—" "Met your mother once. Good woman. Helped my people." He settled her on his horse, mounting behind her. "Besides, I've got a problem with folks who think drowning's a solution to anything. They'll come after me again." Sarah huddled into his coat, aware of his solid warmth at her back. "The council? They have proof of what they did, hidden in the church. Then we'll find it." Luke turned his horse toward the north, where lights were appearing, his cowboys riding in. "But first we're getting you warm." Charlie, the foreman, appeared out of the darkness, leading a string of horses. "Boss, we heard—" He broke off, seeing Sarah. "Madre de Dios, get some men into town," Luke ordered. "Watch the church. Nobody goes in or out tonight." He looked down at Sarah. "Think. You can ride." She straightened, drawing on some deep reserve of strength. "Try to stop me." Luke's laugh was soft and approving. "Ma'am, I don't think anyone could stop you if they tried." He raised his voice to the gathering cowboys. "Mount up. We're riding." To the Double M. They thundered away from Crow's Lake, leaving James Blackwood's wounded man to be collected by his friends. Sarah looked back once, seeing lanterns moving around the ice hole where she'd nearly died. "They killed her there," she said softly. "My mother. She found proof of what they'd done to the native people, how they stole the land. They caught her at the lake, and now they tried the same with you." Luke's voice was grim. "Question is, what are you going to do about it?" Sarah touched the empty space where her mother's journal had been. "I'm going to finish what she started, with or without proof." "Not alone," Luke said quietly. "Not anymore." They rode on through the night, toward the Double M Ranch and whatever tomorrow would bring. Behind them, the moon caught the ice of Crow's Lake, making it shine like polished silver, or the blade of a knife waiting to cut through lies long buried in Montana snow. The Double M Ranch house rose out of the darkness, like a ship emerging from fog, a sprawling two-story structure built of solid timber and determination. Light spilled from every window, and smoke curled from 3 stone chimneys into the winter sky. "Maria!" Luke called as they approached. "Got a guest needing warm blankets and hot coffee." The front door burst open, spilling more light onto the snow. A stout Mexican woman in her 50s hurried down the porch steps, her dark eyes taking in Sarah's wet clothes and pale face. "Dios mío, inside, quickly!" She hustled them through the door, already shouting rapid Spanish to unseen servants. "Charlie sent word. The bath is ready." Sarah found herself whisked upstairs to a large bedroom where a copper tub steamed by the fireplace. Maria efficiently helped her out of her frozen clothes, clucking at her blue-tinged skin. "I'm Maria. Rodriguez, Charlie's mother, she explained, wrapping Sarah in a warm robe. The patron. He's a good man. You're safe here. Sarah sank into the hot water, feeling returning to her limbs in painful waves. Thank you. Rest now. I'll bring you something to wear and hot soup. Maria paused at the door. That medicine pouch around your neck, it's native work? Sarah's hand flew to her throat, finding the small leather bag still there. My mother's. I thought I'd lost it in the lake. Maria smiled. Some things refuse to be lost, señorita. Like truth, like justice. She touched a similar pouch hanging beneath her own shawl. My grandmother was Yaqui. She taught me that bridges exist between all peoples, if we're brave enough to cross them. After Maria left, Sarah examined her mother's pouch in the firelight. The beadwork was intricate, telling a story she'd never fully understood. Until now. The pattern matched the one on her mother's ring, the one she'd thought was just decoration. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. Miss Winchester, Luke's voice. There's soup when you're ready, and we need to talk. A moment, please. She dried quickly and dressed in the clothes Maria had left, a warm wool skirt and fitted blouse that somehow matched her perfectly. When she opened the door, Luke stood waiting in the hallway, his own wet clothes replaced by clean ranchwear. Better? He asked, studying her face. Warmer, at least? She followed him downstairs to a large study, where a fire roared and soup steamed in bowls on a low table. Sit. Luke gestured to a comfortable chair. You've had quite a night. Sarah sank into the chair, accepting the bowl he offered. Why did you help me? Luke settled across from her, stretching his long legs toward the fire. Told you. Knew your mother. There's more. He nodded slowly. Been watching Miller's Creek for years. Towns built on stolen land and buried secrets. Your mother was close to exposing it all. The journal wasn't the only proof, was it? Sarah touched her mother's medicine pouch. The patterns. They're a map. Smart woman, your mother. Knew they'd look for papers, documents, so she hid the truth another way. Luke leaned forward. Question is, do you want to finish what she started? Could be dangerous. Sarah met his gaze. They killed my mother. Tried to kill me. Stole land that belonged to my people. Yes, I know about my grandmother. The medicine pouch wasn't my mother's first. Figured that out, did you? My mother taught me to see what others try to hide. Sarah set down her soup bowl. But I'll need help. The council has money, power, connections, and I have more. Luke's voice was quiet but firm. Plus 20 loyal cowboys who don't take kindly to men who drown a woman in a frozen lake. Why would you risk your ranch, your reputation? Because some things matter more than cattle or money. He stood, moving to his desk. From a drawer he withdrew a faded photograph. Your mother didn't just help my ranch hand that time. She saved my sister's life too, Jenny. She'd married a man from Miller's Creek. Started asking questions about native land claims. Had an accident at Crow's Lake 3 months after your mother died. Sarah's breath caught. I'm sorry. Been waiting for a chance to set things right. Luke handed her the photograph, a young woman with his same determined eyes. Jenny would have liked you. She believed, like your mother, that the truth always finds its way to light. A commotion outside interrupted them. Charlie burst into the study, snow dusting his shoulders. Riders coming from town, he reported. Thompson and the council members. About 15 men. Luke stood. Time to choose, Miss Winchester. Run or stand and fight. Sarah rose, squaring her shoulders. My mother chose to fight. So do I. Good. Luke's smile was fierce and approving. Charlie, get the men ready. Tonight we teach Miller's Creek that some secrets won't stay buried. Through the study window, Sarah watched torches approaching across the snow-covered valley. But for the first time since her mother's death, she felt no fear, only a deep, burning certainty that justice, too long delayed, was finally riding in on the winter wind. Luke's men assembled on the ranch house porch, rifles gleaming in the torchlight. Sarah watched from the study window as Thompson and his riders approached, their horses' hooves crunching in the fresh snow. Thompson's no fool, Luke said, checking his revolver. He wouldn't ride out here unless he thought he held a winning hand. He does. Sarah turned from the window. The territorial office, the deeds, everything's legal on paper. Papers can lie. Luke holstered his gun. Truths. What matters? Thompson's voice carried across the yard. McCall, send out the Winchester woman, and we'll overlook tonight's unpleasantness. Luke moved to the front door, Sarah close behind him. On the porch, Charlie and his men parted to let them through. Luke stepped into the torchlight, his shadow stretching long across the snow. That's close enough, Thompson. The council leader reined in his horse. Behind him, James Blackwood's face was twisted with barely contained rage, a bandage visible beneath his collar where Luke's bullet had grazed him. This is none of your concern, McCall, Thompson called. The girl's a murderer. Killed her own mother. Like my sister killed herself? Luke's voice carried clearly in the cold air. Funny how accidents keep happening at that lake. Thompson's face hardened. Jenny McCall's death was tragic. Jenny McCall's death was murder. Luke, cut him off. Just like Catherine Winchester's. Just like you planned for Sarah tonight. You have no proof, don't I? Luke nodded to Charlie, who disappeared into the house. 15 years of watching, gathering evidence, waiting for the right moment. Charlie returned carrying a stack of papers. Luke took them, holding them up for Thompson to see. Bank records, land transfers, letters that never quite got burned. He smiled grimly. My sister was thorough before you killed her, left everything with me. Sarah saw Thompson's confidence waver for the first time. Those papers are worthless. Maybe, maybe not. But this, Luke pulled out a single yellow document. This is interesting. A receipt from the Territorial Governor's Office, dated 15 years ago. Payment for processing land claims. Signed by you, Thompson, and witnessed by a Native American tribal elder. Impossible, Thompson breathed. We destroyed all copies. Not all. Sarah stepped forward, understanding flooding through her. My mother's medicine pouch. The beadwork pattern. It's not just a map. It's a copy of that receipt, isn't it? Worked into the design where no one would think to look. Luke nodded. Your mother was clever, and knew they'd search for papers, so she hid the truth another way, in plain sight. Lies! James Blackwood spurred his horse forward. All lies. Truth hurts, doesn't it, James? Sarah's voice was steel. Like when you found out your father was helping my mother gather evidence? Is that why he had an accident too? James's face went white. Thompson rounded on him. What is she talking about? Tell them, James. Sarah pressed her advantage. Tell them how your father discovered what really happened to the native people who lived here, the poisoned wells, the forged documents. Tell them how you found his letters to my mother and realized he was going to expose everything. Shut up. James drew his gun, but Luke was faster. The ranch rifles hammered back in unison, covering every rider. Easy now. Luke's voice was deadly calm. Wouldn't want any more accidents. Thompson raised his hands slowly. What do you want? McCall, justice, truth. Everything this town's been burying for 15 years. Luke handed the papers to Charlie. These are copies. Originals are already on their way to the Territorial Marshal's office. By morning, every bank and land office in Montana will know what really happened here. You'll destroy everything we built, Thompson protested. You destroyed it yourself, Sarah said quietly. When you chose greed over humanity, when you murdered innocent people to hide your crimes. The land was empty, Thompson began. The land was my grandmother's, Sarah cut him off, and her people's before that. The wells you poisoned, they drank from them for generations. The graves you built your church over, their ancestors slept there. A murmur ran through Thompson's men. Some began to back their horses away. Times are changing, Thompson, Luke said. Truth's coming to light all over the territory. Native claims being recognized. Crimes being exposed. He stepped closer to Sarah. Question is, do you want to face justice now, or wait for the marshal to drag you out? Thompson looked at his dwindling supporters, then back at the ring of rifles. Slowly he dismounted. "The council will fight this," he warned. "Let them." Sarah touched her mother's medicine pouch. "Some fights are worth having." As Thompson's men turned their horses toward town, Sarah felt Luke's hand brush hers. She looked up to find him watching her with something more than admiration in his eyes. "Your mother would be proud," he said softly. "She'd be proud of both of us," Sarah replied, thinking of Jenny McCall and all the others who died seeking truth. "But it's not over yet, is it?" Luke shook his head. "No, Thompson's right. The council will fight, and there are more secrets to uncover. Good thing we make a strong team then." His smile warmed something deep inside her. "Good thing indeed, Miss Winchester. Good thing indeed." Dawn broke over the Double M Ranch, painting the snow-covered plains in shades of rose and gold. Sarah stood on the porch, her mother's medicine pouch open in her hands. In the early light, the beadwork pattern seemed to shift and change, revealing new secrets with each passing moment. "Breakfast's ready," Luke said behind her. "Maria's made enough to feed an army. I think we might need one." Sarah handed him a piece of paper that had been delivered before sunrise. This came from town. Luke unfolded the note, his jaw tightening as he read. The message was simple. The council offers one last chance. Return to Miller's Creek by sundown or forfeit all claims to Winchester property. "They're bluffing," Luke said, but his hand brushed his gun belt. "Are they?" Sarah pointed to the distant road where dust marked the approach of riders. "That's the third group this morning." Luke nodded to Charlie, who was already mounting up with 2 other men to investigate. "Thompson's gathering support from other settlements, trying to show force. It's not just that." Sarah followed him inside, where Maria was laying out plates of eggs, bacon, and fresh biscuits. "Look at this." She spread out her mother's medicine pouch on the table, carefully tracing the beaded patterns. Each design tells part of the story. The poisoned wells here, the stolen graves here. But this, she pointed to a complex spiral of blue and white. Beads. This shows more land deals, not just in Miller's Creek, but all through the territory. Luke leaned close, his shoulder warm against hers. Thompson's council has friends in high places. Powerful friends who won't want their secrets exposed. Sarah looked up, finding his face inches from hers. For a moment, neither spoke. Maria cleared her throat pointedly. "Coffee's getting cold." They stepped apart, but something had shifted between them, like ice breaking up on a spring river. Before either could speak, Charlie burst through the door. "Riders coming in hot, and boss—" He hesitated. "They're burning the south pasture." Luke was moving before Charlie finished speaking. From the porch, they could see smoke rising against the morning sky. Men on horseback wove through the grass with torches, setting fires to drive Luke's cattle into a stampede. "Get the men mounted," Luke ordered. "We need to—" A shot cracked across the yard. Splinters flew from the porch rail near Sarah's hand. She ducked as Luke pulled her down, more bullets whining overhead. "Back inside!" Luke's voice competed with gunfire. "Charlie, return fire! Cover the north approach!" They scrambled into the house as windows shattered. Maria was already moving, gathering essentials into a bag with practiced efficiency. "The cellar!" she said firmly. "Now!" In the relative safety below ground, Sarah could hear the fight raging above. Luke paced like a caged mountain lion, pausing, only to check his ammunition. "They're not just trying to scare us off," Sarah said. "This is different." "Yeah," Luke's voice was grim. "Thompson's desperate, which means he's afraid." Sarah pulled out her mother's journal, saved from the lake. The pages were water-damaged, but some entries were still legible. "Listen to this. Thompson fears exposure more than death. The graves weren't empty. When they built the church, the witnesses weren't all silenced." "Witnesses?" Luke stopped pacing. "My grandmother's people, the survivors." Sarah's eyes widened. "That's what the spiral pattern means. It's not showing land deals, it's showing escape routes, places where people fled, carrying proof of what happened." Another explosion rocked the house above them. Maria muttered a prayer in Spanish. "Thompson knows," Sarah continued. Excitement. gutting through her fear. If we can find these survivors, we'll have living proof of what they did. Luke knelt beside her, studying the pattern. But first we have to survive the day, Charlie's voice carried down from above. Boss, territorial marshals coming. 5 riders flying the government flag. Luke and Sarah shared a look. The marshal could mean help or disaster depending on whose side he took. Time to choose, Luke said softly. We can stay hidden. Let the marshal handle this his way. Sarah stood, squaring her shoulders. My mother didn't hide. Neither will I. Luke's smile was fierce and proud.
I was hoping you'd say that. He checked his gun once. What justice really
touched her mother's medicine pouch, feeling the strength of generations flowing through the beaded patterns. Ready, she said, and meant it with every fiber of her being. They climbed the cellar stairs together, emerging into a world of smoke and chaos. But Sarah wasn't afraid. For the first time since her mother's death, she knew exactly where she stood and who she stood with. Territorial Marshal Wade Bennett sat his horse in the Double M's smoke-filled yard, 5 deputies flanking him. The morning sun caught his silver badge as he surveyed the scene. Burning pastures, bullet-riddled walls, armed men on all sides. Quite a situation you've got here, McCall, he drawled. Luke emerged from the house first, hands carefully away from his guns. Sarah followed, her mother's medicine pouch visible at her throat. The marshal's eyes fixed on it, something flickering in his weathered face. Thompson's men attacked my ranch, Luke said, burning pastures, shooting at women. That's so? Bennett dismounted slowly. And I suppose it has nothing to do with these accusations you're spreading? These papers you've been sending to my office? Sarah stepped forward. Those papers tell the truth about Miller's Creek, about murdered innocents and stolen land. Miss Winchester. Bennett nodded to her. Your mother made similar claims, as I recall, before they killed her. Proof's what matters in law, Bennett said, not stories. Then let me show you proof. Sarah held out her mother's medicine pouch. Every bead here tells a story. Every pattern maps a crime. And I know where to find the survivors who can testify. The marshal stiffened. Survivors? My grandmother's people. The ones who escaped the poisoned wells, the ones who saw what Thompson and his counsel did. Sarah's voice carried across the yard. The ones your office chose to ignore 15 years ago. Bennett's deputies exchanged uneasy looks. The marshal's hand strayed to his gun belt, then dropped away. That's a serious accusation, miss. I've got more. Luke pulled out a leather folder. Land deeds, bank transfers, including payments to the territorial office for convenient oversights. Bennett's face darkened. You're playing a dangerous game, McCall. Not playing at all. Marshal, Luke's voice was steel. I've got copies of everything in safe hands. Anything happens to us, it all goes public. Every name, every bribe, every murder. A tense silence fell. In the distance, the south pasture still burned, smoke twisting. Against the morning sky like tortured spirits. Bennett swung back onto his horse. I'll need to see these survivors, hear their testimony. First, Sarah said, you're going to arrest Thompson and his men, before more accidents happen at Crow's Lake. The marshal studied her for a long moment. You're as stubborn as your mother. I'll take that as a compliment. It wasn't meant as one. Bennett sighed heavily. Catherine Winchester was right about one thing, though. This territory's changing. Old ways. They don't work anymore. He turned to his deputies. Ride into Miller's Creek. Bring in Thompson and the council members. Do it quiet if you can, but do it. As the deputies rode out, Bennett looked back at Sarah. Your grandmother, she was Blackfeet. Yes. I knew her before it all went wrong. He touched his badge. Wore this 15 years trying to keep peace. Sometimes peace costs too much. It cost my mother her life, Sarah said quietly. And my sister, Luke added. Bennett nodded slowly. Maybe it's time to balance those accounts. He gestured to the medicine pouch. Show me these patterns. Tell me about these survivors. Inside the ranch house, Sarah spread her mother's beadwork on the table. Luke stood close behind her as she traced the intricate designs. Here, these blue spirals show mountain caves where people hid. White crosses mark massacre sites. Red lines. She paused. Red lines are escape routes to Canada, where some still live. 3 days' ride, Bennett mused. If they'd testify, they will. Sarah's fingers found a pattern she hadn't noticed before. Look, this isn't just a map, it's a timeline. Dates worked into the beads. The day Thompson became council leader, the day the wells were poisoned, the day they started building on the burial grounds. Luke leaned closer, his breath warm on her neck. Clever woman, your mother. Too clever, Bennett said grimly. Got her killed. No. Sarah turned to face them both. Their crimes got her. Killed! Their greed! Their fear of the truth. She touched the beadwork gently. Mother knew what she was risking. She left this for me because she believed justice would come. Justice comes in its own time, Bennett said. Question is, are you ready for what it brings? Thompson's friends won't go quietly. Stories like this, they shake foundations. Some foundations need shaking. Luke's hand found Sarah's, warm and strong. Some truths need telling. Bennett's weathered face showed a hint of approval. Then let's hear them. All of them. He spread a map on the table. Show me where these survivors are. But first, he fixed them both with a hard stare. Tell me everything, from the beginning, every detail. Sarah squeezed Luke's hand, drawing strength from his presence. Then she began to speak, unraveling 15 years of lies, one bead, one truth at a time. Dawn painted the eastern sky as Sarah stood at Luke's study window, watching Marshal Bennett's men escort Thompson and 3 council members toward Miller's Creek jail. Luke's ranch hands had contained the pasture fire, though the acrid smell of smoke still hung in the air. Tea, Luke appeared beside her, offering a steaming cup. Your Maria spoils me. Sarah accepted it gratefully, breathing in the familiar scent of herbs. She uses the same blends my mother did. Mountain sage and wildflower honey, Luke smiled. Some traditions cross all boundaries. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the sun rise. Sarah was acutely aware of his presence, the quiet strength that seemed to fill any room he occupied. I've been thinking, Luke said finally, about what comes next. The survivor's testimony, Marshal Bennett said, not that. Luke set his cup down, turning to face her. About you, about us. Sarah's heart stuttered. Luke, hear me out. He took her hands in his, rough palms warm against her skin. Thompson's men will be looking for revenge. The council's friends won't stop. Just because we've made arrests, you'll need protection. I can protect myself. I know. His thumbs traced circles on her wrists. That's one of the things I admire about you, but there's more than just protection to consider. From his pocket, he withdrew a small silver ring, worn smooth with age. This was my mother's. Before that, it belonged to my grandmother, simple women who built something lasting in this hard country. Sarah's breath caught. Luke, are you? Marriage would give you legal standing, he said, practical, but his eyes were tender. The courts respect a wife's testimony more than a single woman's, and combined, our properties would be harder to challenge. Very sensible, Sarah murmured, fighting a smile. Luke's face softened. Nothing sensible about how I feel when I look at you. When I see your courage, your fire. He took a deep breath. I know it's sudden. We've known each other barely 2 days, but sometimes, you just know. Sarah touched the ring, feeling its history, like my mother knew my father. They only knew each other a week before they married, and they were happy. Very. Sarah looked up at him. Until the council's greed destroyed everything. Then let's rebuild. Luke's voice was gentle but firm. Not just justice for the past, but something new, something stronger. Outside, horses nickered in the early morning light. From the kitchen came the sounds of Maria starting breakfast, the comfortable rhythms of ranch life continuing despite all that had happened. "The council will say you only want my land," Sarah said softly. "Let them." Luke's free hand cupped her cheek. "We know the truth." Sarah studied his face, the honest eyes, the smile lines that spoke of laughter despite life's hardships. In 2 days, he'd risked everything to help her. Not for land or profit, but because it was right. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, yes, I'll marry you." She smiled through sudden tears. "For all the sensible reasons, and the not-so-sensible ones too." Luke slipped the ring onto her finger, then pulled her close. Their first kiss tasted of tea and promise, of endings and beginnings twined together like beads on a string. A throat cleared in the doorway. They turned to find Maria watching them, her eyes bright with approval and unshed tears. "Breakfast is ready," she announced, "and Charlie brings news from town." Luke kept his arm around Sarah's waist. "Good news or bad?" "Both, maybe." Maria's expression turned serious. "Thompson's escaped." Sarah's hand went to her mother's medicine pouch. "How?" "Help from outside," Charlie said, appearing behind Maria. "Professional men by the looks of it. Killed 2 of the marshal's deputies." Luke's arm tightened protectively. "Bennett?" "Organizing a search." "But boss—" Charlie hesitated. "They left a message. Said they're riding for the caves, where the survivors are." Sarah's blood ran cold. After all they'd uncovered, after coming so far. "How long to reach the caves?" Luke asked. 3 days hard ride," Charlie replied, "through dangerous country. Then we'd better get started." Luke looked down at Sarah. "Ready for a wedding? Journey, future Mrs. McCall?" Despite everything, Sarah found herself smiling. "As long as it includes bringing Thompson to justice." "Wouldn't have it any other way." Luke turned to Maria. "How fast can you organize a wedding?" The older woman was already moving. "Give me an hour. Charlie, fetch the preacher and send 2 men to watch the North Trail." As the house erupted into activity, Luke pulled Sarah close again. "Not exactly the quiet ceremony most brides dream of." "I'm not most brides." Sarah touched his cheek. "And this isn't most marriages." "No," Luke agreed, his eyes shining with pride and something deeper. "This is justice and love, all wrapped up together, just like those beads of yours. Beauty hiding strength." Sarah kissed him again. Brief, but fierce. "Then let's get married. Catch some criminals and save my grandmother's people, in that order." Luke's laugh was warm and free. "Yes, ma'am, whatever the lady desires." The next hour passed in a whirlwind of activity at the Double M. Sarah stood in Maria's room, wearing a borrowed dress of deep blue wool, as the older woman pinned up her hair with trembling fingers. "My own wedding day," Maria murmured. "I shook, like an aspen leaf, but you—" She met Sarah's eyes in the mirror. "You have the look of a warrior." "I'm scared," Sarah admitted. "Not of marrying Luke, but of what comes after." Maria nodded, securing another pin. "Good. Fear keeps us sharp." She touched the medicine pouch at Sarah's throat. "But you carry strength here. Your mother's strength, your grandmother's." A knock at the door interrupted them. "Come," Maria called. Reverend Shaw entered, his young face troubled. Sarah tensed, but he raised his hands peacefully. "I'm not here to stop anything," he said quickly. "I've come to help." "Why?" Sarah demanded. "Because I was wrong." He pulled a folded paper from his coat. This was in the church records, a real deed showing the land's original ownership. I should have spoken up sooner." Sarah took the document with unsteady hands. "You're risking everything by showing us this. Some risks are worth taking," Shaw straightened. "I'll perform the ceremony, and then, if you'll have me, I'd like to ride with you to the caves. Those people deserve justice." Before Sarah could respond, Charlie burst in. "Rider's coming, but it's all right," he added quickly. "It's running." Wolf's band. Sarah hurried to the window. Sure enough, a group of mounted Blackfeet warriors approached the ranch, led by a tall man whose presence commanded attention even at a distance. "My grandmother's brother," she breathed. "But how?" "I sent word." Maria said simply. Some bonds are never broken. Luke met the riders in the yard, his posture respectful but unafraid. Running Wolf dismounted, his dark eyes taking in the burned pasture and bullet-scarred walls before settling on Sarah as she emerged from the house. "Sister's daughter," he greeted her in English, "your mother's spirit rides the wind today." "Uncle," Sarah fought tears as he embraced her. "I never knew. There was much hidden, much lost." He held her at arm's length. "But not all. Not everything." More riders appeared on the horizon, Marshal Bennett returning with his remaining deputies, and behind them, to Sarah's shock, several prominent ranchers from neighboring spreads. "Word travels fast," Luke said, joining them. "Seems Thompson's made enemies everywhere." Bennett dismounted, nodding to Running Wolf. "It's been a long time, old friend. Too long." Running Wolf's face was grave. "The wounds are deep. But healing starts today," Sarah said firmly. She looked at Luke. "If you still want to marry me with all this chaos." His smile was answer enough, but his words made her heart sore. "Chaos is what brought us together. Might as well make it official." The ceremony was unlike any Miller's Creek had ever seen. Blackfeet warriors stood alongside white ranchers as Reverend Shaw spoke the traditional words. Maria wept openly, while Charlie beamed with pride. Marshal Bennett and Running Wolf stood as witnesses, bridging a divide that had seemed uncrossable just days before. When Luke slipped his mother's ring onto her finger, Sarah added her own token, a beaded band she'd swiftly woven that morning, incorporating her mother's patterns of truth and justice. Two traditions, Running Wolf approved, two strengths, joined. But there was no time for celebration. As soon as the ceremony ended, preparations for the journey began. Maps were spread out, supplies gathered, strategies formed. "Thompson's got a day's head start," Bennett reported, "but he's pushing hard, leaving a trail. He'll break for the pass here," Running Wolf indicated, "where the caves open to the north." "How many survivors?" Luke asked. "Enough." Running Wolf's eyes held ancient pain. "Enough to bury our dead twice over." Sarah studied her mother's beadwork. "The pattern shows a hidden valley beyond the caves." "That's where they are?" Her uncle nodded. "The old ones, the witnesses. They've waited 15 years for this day." "Then let's not keep them waiting," Luke said. He turned to the gathered allies, native warriors, white lawmen, ranchers, and reformed men of God. "Anyone who rides with us should know this won't be easy. Thompson's got hired guns and powerful friends. He's also got innocent blood on his hands," Bennett added. "Native and white alike." Running Wolf mounted his horse. "Blood calls for justice." One by one, the others mounted up. Sarah felt the weight of history as Luke helped her onto her horse. Not just her mother's story now, but a larger tale of wrongs being righted, of truth breaking free from long imprisonment. "Ready?" Luke asked, swinging into his own saddle. Sarah touched her mother's medicine pouch, then the ring that marked her new life. "Together," she said. As they rode out from the Double M, the morning sun caught the beadwork at her throat, sending fragments of light dancing across the snow, like scattered gems or like justice, finally breaking through the dark. The late morning sun caught the snow in diamond sparkles as the wedding party gathered in the Double M's main room. Maria had transformed the space with evergreen boughs and ribbon, their fresh scent mixing with coffee and wood smoke. Sarah stood by the fireplace in her blue wool dress, now adorned with a ceremonial Blackfeet sash Running Wolf had presented her. "Your grandmother wore this at her wedding," he explained softly. Before the troubles came, Luke appeared at her side, handsome, in a clean black coat. His eyes widened at the sight of her, and Sarah felt a warmth that had nothing to do with the crackling fire. "You look like a queen," he murmured. "A warrior queen," Charlie added from nearby, earning appreciative nods from the Blackfeet warriors. Marshal Bennett shifted uncomfortably, not to rush things, but Thompson's getting further ahead every minute. "Let him run," Running Wolf said calmly. "The spirits of those he killed ride with us. Justice has patience." Reverend Shaw stepped forward, Bible in hand. "Shall we begin?" The ceremony was brief but meaningful. Shaw spoke of unity bridging divides, of love conquering hatred. When he reached the traditional vows, Sarah and Luke added their own promises. "I pledge not just my heart," Luke said, "but my strength in your fight for justice." "And I pledge," Sarah responded, "not just my love, but my trust in building something new from the ashes of the old." As Shaw pronounced them husband and wife, a commotion erupted outside. Charlie drew his gun, but it was only Maria's youngest son, Miguel, racing in from his watch position. "Riders coming from town!" The celebration instantly shifted to battle readiness, but when Luke stepped onto the porch, rifle ready, he laughed in surprise. "Well, I'll be damned." A wagon approached, driven by Martha Blackwood of all people. Behind her rode several women from Miller's Creek, including wives of council members. They carried baskets and parcels. "Put those guns down," Martha called. "Out. We're here for the wedding." Sarah joined Luke on the porch, stunned. "Mrs. Blackwood?" The older woman climbed down, her face worn but determined. "My husband and son chose their path. I'm choosing mine." She hefted a basket. "Brought your wedding feast, though it seems we're a mite late for the ceremony." Other women followed, bearing food and small gifts. One carried a quilt made from patches of fabric Sarah recognized from her mother's sewing basket. "We saved these," the woman explained softly. When they cleared your mother's house, it wasn't right what they did. None of it was right." Marshal Bennett watched the scene with shrewd eyes. "Thompson's lost his grip on the town, seems like." "The women always knew," Maria said, helping unload the wagon. "We always know." Martha approached Sarah, holding something wrapped in cloth. "This was your mother's. James took it the night she died, but I kept it safe." She unveiled a beautiful beaded bracelet. "Thought you should have it for your wedding day." Sarah's fingers trembled as she touched the beadwork. The pattern matched. Her mother's medicine pouch, another piece of the hidden truth. "Thank you," she whispered. Luke's arm slipped around her waist. "Seems justice takes many forms." The wedding feast that followed was unlike anything Miller's Creek had ever seen. Blackfeet warriors shared coffee with ranchers' wives. Marshal Bennett's deputies swapped stories with Charlie's vaqueros. Martha Blackwood and Maria exchanged recipes, bridging cultures through the simple act of breaking bread. But underneath the celebration ran a current of tension. Every rider's approach brought hands to weapons. Every sudden sound turned heads. They all knew Thompson was out there, racing toward the caves, toward innocent lives. Running Wolf appeared at Sarah's side as she studied her mother's bracelet. "The pattern," he said quietly. "You see it?" "Yes." The beadwork showed a different part of the story. Names, dates, locations she hadn't known. More proof. "More truth," he corrected. "Truth that must be protected." He looked meaningfully at the gathered townswomen. "Not all enemies wear guns. Some carry whispers, spread lies. You'll need these allies in the days ahead." Luke joined them, his face serious. "Sun's westering. We should ride soon." Sarah nodded, but first she approached Martha Blackwood. "Will you help when we bring the truth to light?" The older woman straightened her spine. "Time I stood for something more than fear and lies. We all will." She gestured to the other women. "Miller's Creek needs healing as much as justice." "Then let's find both," Sarah said. The wedding party transformed into a war council. Maps were spread on the dining table, between plates of Martha's roast beef and Maria's tamales. Bennett's deputies detailed Thompson's trail, while Running Wolf's warriors identified secret paths through the mountains. Sarah stood with her new husband, watching their unlikely alliance take shape. Luke's hand found hers, warm and strong. "Not exactly a traditional wedding day," he said. Sarah touched her mother's bracelet, then her grandmother's sash. "No," she agreed, "it's better. It's real." Around them, the future of Miller's Creek was changing, like winter giving way to spring. But first, they had a long ride ahead and lives to save. The mountain pass loomed ahead, a natural gateway cut through towering walls of rock. 3 days of hard riding had brought them here, following Thompson's trail through increasingly treacherous terrain. Snow lay deep in the shadowed places, and the wind carried winter's bite. Tracks split here, Running Wolf announced, studying the ground. 3 riders broke east. Thompson and the rest continued north. Luke reined in beside Sarah. Trying to confuse us? No. Sarah pointed to her mother's beadwork. They're heading for the other entrance. See, the pattern shows 2 paths to the caves. Marshal Bennett rode up, his badge catching the weak sunlight. Then we split up too. Running Wolf, take your warriors. East. McCall, you and your men ride with me north. Mrs. McCall goes north, Luke and Sarah said together. Bennett smiled slightly. Figured as much. They separated quickly, with practiced efficiency. Running Wolf touched his niece's shoulder before riding out. Your mother's spirit guides us, he said softly. We'll find you at the caves. The northern trail grew steeper, winding through stands of pine and bare-branched aspen. Sarah rode close to Luke, every sense alert. Something felt wrong about the silence. Marshal, Luke called softly. You smell that? Bennett nodded grimly. Wood smoke. They crested a rise and saw it. A thin spiral of smoke rising from a sheltered hollow. 2 horses were tied in the trees, but there was no sign of their riders. Trap, Charlie muttered. Spring it anyway, Bennett decided. But careful like. Charlie, take 3 men wide around the east. Mrs. McCall, you and Luke. A rifle cracked. Bennett's horse reared as bark exploded from a tree trunk inches from his head. More shots followed as hidden gunmen opened fire from the rocks above. Cover! Luke shouted, pulling Sarah behind a fallen log as bullets kicked up snow around them. Charlie's men returned fire, forcing some of Thompson's ambushers to duck back. Sarah counted at least 6 shooters, maybe more. We need to reach those rocks, Bennett called from behind a tree. Get above them. Can't cross that open ground, Luke replied. They've got us pinned. Sarah studied the terrain, then pulled. Out her mother's medicine pouch, the beadwork showed this very pass and something else. There's a way, she said. Mother marked it, a narrow trail there. She pointed to a seemingly solid rock face, behind that stand of pine. Luke squinted through the gunfire. You sure? Trust the beads, Sarah said. They haven't been wrong yet. Bennett nodded to 2 of his deputies. Work your way over there. Rest of us'll keep their attention here. The deputies belly-crawled through the snow while the others maintained covering fire. Sarah held her breath as they reached the pines, then disappeared behind them. Minutes stretched like hours. The gunfire continued, neither side gaining advantage. Then, suddenly, shots erupted from above the ambushers' position. Thompson's men, caught between 2 fires, began to break. Now! Bennett shouted. They surged forward. Sarah saw Luke take down 1 gunman with a clean shot. Charlie's men emerged from their flanking position, cutting off escape routes. Within moments, it was over. Thompson? Luke asked as they secured the survivors. One of the captured men spat blood from a split lip. Long gone. You're too late anyway. He'll reach the caves by nightfall. How many men with him? Bennett demanded. Enough, the man sneered. Them Indians won't know what hit. Them. Sarah stepped forward, her mother's bracelet glinting. You're wrong. They've known for 15 years. Known and waited and prepared. Search them, Luke ordered. Then tie them to their horses. Marshal, if you could spare a deputy to take them. Back, already planning on it. Bennett turned to the prisoners. You'll face territorial justice for this. Murder of lawmen, among other things. One of the captured men looked at Sarah with something like fear. You're her daughter, ain't you? Catherine Winchester's girl. I am. She tried to warn us. You know. Said the land would remember. Said truth can't stay buried forever. He shuddered. Should have listened. Yes, Sarah said quietly. You should have. As Bennett's deputy led the prisoners away, they regrouped quickly. The shooting had cost them valuable time. Thompson's got maybe 3 hours on us, Luke calculated. Less, Sarah corrected, studying the beadwork. The caves have defenders. They'll slow him down. Your grandmother's people? Charlie asked. Sarah nodded. And others, all the ones who escaped, who survived to testify. She looked at Luke. We need to hurry. You heard my wife, Luke told the men. Mount up. They rode hard through the afternoon, following a trail that grew clearer with each mile. Thompson was no longer trying to hide his passage, either confidence or desperation driving him to speed over stealth. As the sun settled toward the western peaks, they heard it, a single rifle shot echoing off the cliffs, then another and another. "The caves," Sarah whispered. Luke's face was grim. "Let's finish this." They spurred their horses forward, racing against darkness and destiny, toward a confrontation 15 years in the making. Dusk painted the cliffs in shades of purple and gold as they approached the caves. The gunfire had stopped, leaving an eerie silence broken only by their horses' labored breathing. "There," Sarah pointed to a narrow valley ahead. "The entrance is hidden behind that rock fall." Luke studied the terrain with experienced eyes. "Thompson's men will have high ground positions. Charlie, already on it, boss." The foreman signaled to his men, who began spreading out along the ridgeline. Marshal Bennett drew alongside them. Running Wolf should be approaching from the east by now. A bird call echoed through the valley, not quite natural, not quite right. "That's him," Sarah said, recognizing her uncle's signal. Luke raised his arm, and an answering call came from Charlie's men. The pieces were in place, but something still felt wrong. "Too quiet," Bennett muttered. As if in answer, a voice called out from the rocks, "That's far enough." Thompson stepped into view on a ledge above the cave entrance. He held a rifle casually, but his face showed the strain of 3 days' hard riding. "Miss Winchester," he called. "Or should I say Mrs. McCall now? Congratulations on your wedding." "It's over, Thompson," Luke shouted back. "We have your men. The marshal has evidence. Surrender now." "Evidence?" Thompson laughed harshly. "I have evidence too. 15 years of dirty secrets. Every important man in the territory has something to hide. You really think they'll let you expose it all?" "We already have," Sarah replied. "While you were running, we were sending telegrams to newspapers, to governors, to Washington itself. By now, everyone knows about Miller's Creek." Thompson's composure cracked slightly. "You're bluffing, like you bluffed about my mother's death being an accident." Sarah touched her beaded bracelet. "The truth was here all along, woven into every pattern. Names, dates, places, everything she discovered preserved in plain sight." Movement caught her eye, shadows shifting among the rocks. Running Wolf's warriors were getting into position. "Your hired guns are captured or dead," Bennett added. "Give it up." "Dead?" Thompson's smile was ugly. "Like these witnesses you're so eager to find?" Sarah's heart stopped. "What did you do?" "Nothing yet, but I have men in the caves. One signal from me." He raised his arm. An arrow hissed through the air, taking Thompson's hat clean off his head. He ducked instinctively and chaos erupted. Running Wolf's warriors emerged from hiding, their rifles covering the cave entrance. Charlie's men appeared on the opposite ridge. Thompson was surrounded, but he still held that terrible smile. "Kill me," he called, "and my men execute the hostages." "No one's killing anyone," Luke said firmly. He turned to Sarah. "The beadwork, does it show another way in?" Sarah studied the patterns frantically. "Yes, there, a back entrance through the high canyon." "Charlie!" Luke beckoned his foreman. "Take 4 men and—" A shot rang out from the caves. Then another. Screams echoed from within. "Your witnesses are dying, Miss Winchester," Thompson shouted. "Just like your mother!" Sarah spurred her horse forward before anyone could stop her. Luke called her name, but she was already halfway to the cave entrance. "Stop," she yelled. "I have what you really want." Thompson's rifle trained on her. "And what's that?" "The original deed, the one proving you never owned the land." She pulled her mother's medicine pouch free. "It's been here all along, sewn into the lining." "Sarah, no!" Luke's voice was anguished, but she kept riding, holding the pouch high. Thompson's eyes fixed on it greedily. "Bring it to me," he ordered. Slowly, Sarah guided her horse carefully, up the narrow trail to his position. Behind her, she heard Luke and Bennett arguing in fierce whispers. Running Wolf's warriors held their positions, arrows nocked. "That's right," Thompson said as she approached. "Nice and easy." She reached the ledge and dismounted, holding out the pouch. Thompson snatched it with his free hand, never taking the rifle off her. 15 years, he muttered. 15 years of building something great, and you destroy it all for what? Ghost stories and Indian trinkets? For justice, Sarah said quietly. Thompson ripped open the pouch's lining. Papers spilled out, but not what he expected. What? He stared at. The fragments of his own ledgers, his own letters, evidence of his crimes preserved in his own hand. My mother wasn't the only one who kept records, Sarah said. Thompson's face contorted. He swung the rifle toward her. An arrow took him in the shoulder, spinning him around. Luke's shot followed, striking Thompson's hand, sending the rifle clattering over the edge. Sarah dove for cover as gunfire erupted from multiple directions. Running Wolf's warriors stormed the cave entrance, while Charlie's men descended from the ridgeline. Sarah! Luke was fighting his way up the trail to her. I'm all right. She crawled to safer ground. The hostages, Charlie's men are getting them out the back way, Bennett called. Thompson's bluff about killing them was just that, a bluff. Thompson himself lay groaning on the ledge, clutching his wounded shoulder. Sarah stood over him, her mother's torn medicine pouch in her hands. The land remembers, she said softly, just like she told you it would. Luke reached her side, pulling her close. Don't ever do that again. Had to get close enough. She leaned into his strength. Had to make him show his true self. From the caves came sounds of reunion as Running Wolf's warriors found their long-hidden kin. Bennett personally shackled Thompson, reading him his rights with grim satisfaction. But the day's revelations weren't finished. As the sun set behind the mountains, the caves yielded one final secret, a hidden chamber where Catherine Winchester's original documents lay preserved, waiting for justice to find them at last. The caves echoed with voices as Running Wolf's warriors led survivors into the dying light. Sarah stood at the entrance, watching faces emerge from shadow, faces that carried 15 years of hidden truth. Elders, children who'd grown to adulthood. In exile, women who'd fled with nothing but their memories and their determination to testify. Sarah, an old woman, approached, her face lined with years but her eyes bright with recognition. Catherine's daughter, you have her spirit. Grandmother? Sarah whispered. Grace Blackfoot embraced her granddaughter, smelling of sage and wood smoke. We knew you'd come, the signs were clear, but their reunion was cut short by shouts from above. Thompson, despite his wounds and shackles, had broken free from Bennett's deputies. He stood at the cliff's edge, swaying. You think this is over? He screamed. I still have friends, powerful friends. Luke drew his gun, but Sarah stepped forward. Those friends abandoned you the moment we found proof. It's finished, Thompson. Nothing's finished. He pulled something from his coat, a small leather book. Your mother's real journal, the one that proves how deep this goes, how many people were involved. He held it out over the precipice. One more step and 15 years of truth burns. Sarah felt Luke tense beside her, ready to shoot, but her grandmother's hand touched her arm. The land remembers, Grace Blackfoot said softly. Show him. Sarah understood. She lifted her mother's torn medicine pouch, now empty of its hidden papers. Look around you, Thompson. Look at their faces. Every survivor here carries the truth in their heart, in their memory. You can't burn that away. Memory fades. Thompson's laugh was wild. Papers burn, but beadwork endures, said a new voice. James Blackwood emerged from the cave, his face haggard. I found my father's letters, the ones he wrote before you killed him. He copied everything, worked it into patterns just like Catherine Winchester did. Thompson's face went slack. James, you're with them? I'm with the truth. James held up a beaded belt. My father learned from his wife's people. Every transaction, every murder, every lie, it's all here. In patterns that will outlast paper. Impossible. The land remembers, Sarah repeated. And so do we. Thompson looked from face to face, the survivors, the warriors, his own former allies turning against him. His grip on the journal loosened. My father believed in your vision once, James continued. A prosperous town, a new future. but not built on blood. Never on blood. Luke stepped forward, his voice gentle but firm. "It's over, Thompson. Let it go." For a moment it seemed he would. His shoulders sagged, the journal started to lower, then his face twisted. "Never!" He struck a match one-handed, touching it to the journal. Paper caught instantly. Sarah's cry mingled with others, but an arrow was faster. Running Wolf's shaft struck true, piercing Thompson's arm. The journal flew from his grasp. Luke dove for it, catching the burning book inches from the cliff's edge. He beat out the flames with his coat as Thompson collapsed, the fight finally gone from him. "Get him out of here," Bennett ordered his deputies, "and this time, watch him proper." Sarah hardly noticed them dragging Thompson away. She knelt beside Luke, touching the charred journal with trembling fingers. "Mother's words. Most survived," Luke said softly. "Like you. Like all of these people." Grace Blackfoot joined them, her wise eyes taking in the scene. Catherine knew this day would come. She wove it into every pattern, not just evidence, but hope. Hope that truth would prevail. Around them, more people emerged from the caves. Marshal Bennett's men leading out Thompson's last followers in chains, Running Wolf's warriors helping elderly survivors descend to waiting horses, James Blackwood sharing his father's final letters with the territorial lawman. Sarah looked at her grandmother. "What happens now?" "Now," Grace smiled. "Now we go home, all of us. The land has waited long enough." Luke helped Sarah to her feet, keeping her close. "Miller's Creek won't be the same." "No," Sarah agreed. "It will be better, true to its real history at last." The sun had set, but lanterns bobbed like fireflies as the large group began their journey down the mountain. Sarah rode between her new husband and her grandmother, feeling the weight of the past lifting with each step toward home. Behind them, the caves stood empty of their long-held secrets, but the truth, like the beadwork that had preserved it, would endure, beautiful, intricate, and unbreakable at last. Spring came early to Miller's Creek that year. As the last snow melted from the valley, changes swept through the town like the warm Chinook winds. The territorial court convened in the newly renamed Justice Hall, formerly the council chamber, where Thompson and his conspirators had plotted their crimes. Sarah sat beside Luke in the crowded room, watching Thompson and his remaining allies face the judge. Her grandmother, Grace Blackfoot, sat on her other side, regal in a mixture of traditional dress and frontier clothing that symbolized the town's new unity. "The evidence is overwhelming," the judge declared, his voice carrying to the packed gallery. "Multiple murders, land theft, conspiracy, and crimes against the native peoples of this territory. The court finds all defendants guilty." Thompson stood rigid as the judge continued. "You will serve the remainder of your lives in territorial prison. Your properties will be returned to their rightful owners, and reparations will be paid from your assets." Sarah squeezed Luke's hand as the judge turned to the survivors. "To the people who kept these truths alive for 15 years, this court offers its deepest apologies. Your testimony has exposed corruption that reached far beyond Miller's Creek. Changes are already spreading across the territory." Grace Blackfoot rose, her voice clear and strong. "We do not seek vengeance, only justice and the right to return home. And you shall have it," the judge assured her. "The territorial governor has signed new treaties recognizing your claims. Miller's Creek will be a shared settlement, as it should have been from the start." As Thompson was led away, Sarah saw James Blackwood watching from the back of the room. Their eyes met briefly, and he nodded, acknowledgement of the truth's final victory over family ties. Outside, the town was transforming. Native families moved freely through the streets, reclaiming their place in the community. Martha Blackwood had turned the former council meeting house into a school where both settler and native children learned together. The old church, cleansed of its dark secrets, rang with hymns in multiple languages. "Your mother would be proud," Grace said as they walked through the bustling streets. She saw this future in her dreams, two peoples living as one. "We have a long way to go," Sarah admitted. Luke smiled. "But we've made a start. The Double M's spring cattle drive leaves next week. Half my crew is Blackfeet now. They reached Sarah's childhood home, restored and expanded. The garden where her mother had once hidden her secrets now bloomed with both native medicinal plants and settler flowers, a living symbol of harmony. The land remembers, Grace said, touching a sage plant, but it also forgives when justice is served. Sarah touched her mother's beaded bracelet, then the simple silver ring Luke had given her, old and new, past and future, woven together like strands of destiny. Now, her grandmother said with a twinkle in her eye, when will you tell your husband about the child? Luke's head snapped around. Child? Sarah laughed at his expression. I was waiting for the right moment. New life, new beginnings. His kiss tasted of joy and promise. Around them Miller's Creek hummed with the sound of two peoples becoming one, of truth blooming like spring flowers from the soil of justice, long delayed but finally served. Summer bloomed across Miller's Creek, bringing with it a season of renewal. The town had been officially renamed Two Rivers Junction, marking its new identity as a place where cultures flowed together like the waterways that bordered its lands. Sarah stood in her mother's garden, now twice its original size, watching Grace Blackfoot teach a group of settler women about traditional healing plants. Her own pregnancy was showing now, her belly rounded beneath her apron as she harvested herbs for the town's new healing center. Your mother did this same work, Grace said as the other women left, building bridges through shared knowledge. And they killed her for it, Sarah said softly. But her work lives on. Grace touched a sage plant. Like these roots, truth grows stronger for having survived the winter. Luke appeared at the garden gate, his cattle drive finished early. Ladies, he greeted them, kissing Sarah's cheek. The territorial marshal sends news. Thompson, Sarah asked. Dead. Took his own life in prison rather than face more questioning about his powerful friends. Luke's face was grim, but his confession named names. The governors launched investigations across 3 territories. Grace nodded solemnly. The truth spreads like ripples in a pond. They walked together through the town, seeing changes everywhere. The general store now sold both settler goods and native crafts. Charlie Rodriguez's sister had opened a cafe serving food from multiple cultures. Even the church had been transformed, its walls adorned with symbols from both people's spiritual traditions. At the newly established town council, equal parts native and settler, James Blackwood was speaking. The silver mine shares have been redistributed. Every family, both native and settler, now owns a stake in the region's prosperity. Martha Blackwood, looking years younger without the weight of secrets, added, the school curriculum will include both people's histories. No more hiding the past. Sarah touched her mother's beaded bracelet, remembering. Mother always said education was the key to understanding. Speaking of education, Running Wolf said from his place on the council, the territorial governor has approved our proposal. Two Rivers Junction will host the territory's first integrated teaching college, Reverend Shaw stood, and the church has offered its land for the building. Time to replace old sins with new hopes. After the meeting, Sarah and Luke walked with Grace to the cemetery. Catherine Winchester's grave had been moved from its isolated spot to lie beside her husband's, both now surrounded by a garden where native and settler flowers grew together. I've found more of her patterns, Grace said, showing Sarah a newly discovered piece of beadwork. These tell the story of her hopes for the future, for you. Sarah studied the intricate designs through tears. She saw this, didn't she? All of it. She saw the possibility, Grace corrected. You and Luke made it real. Luke touched the small gravestone. We named one mine shaft after her, the Catherine Deep. Its silver will help build the teaching college. She would have liked that, Sarah smiled, using the land's wealth to build knowledge instead of lies. They turned at the sound of children's laughter. A group of young ones, native and settler mixed, played among the tombstones without fear or prejudice. One little girl wore a dress combining calico with traditional beadwork, a fashion becoming common in Two Rivers Junction. The future, Grace said simply. Sarah felt her baby move and placed a hand on her belly. A future built on truth and love, Luke added, his arm around her waist. Don't forget that part. As they walked home through the summer evening, Sarah saw her mother's dream alive in every face they passed, every new building rising, every garden combining old wisdom with new growth. The land remembered, but it also forgave, allowing truth and reconciliation to bloom together like flowers after rain. Above them, an eagle circled, nature's witness to a community healing its ancient wounds, one truth, one day, one shared smile at a time. 1 year later, spring flowers dotted the hillside where Catherine Winchester's teaching college rose against the Montana sky. Sarah stood at its entrance, one hand resting on her swollen belly, the other holding a piece of beadwork she'd crafted. Herself, a combination of her mother's patterns and new designs that told the story of two rivers' junctions transformation. Ready? Luke appeared beside her, their infant daughter, Catherine Grace, bundled warmly in his arms. Almost. Sarah touched the cornerstone, which bore inscriptions in both English and Blackfeet. Just remembering. The ceremony would begin. Soon. Territorial officials, native leaders, and townspeople were gathering on the newly constructed steps. Among them, Sarah saw faces that told the story of the past year's healing. Martha Blackwood stood with Grace Blackfoot, the two grandmothers, comparing notes on the baby blanket they'd collaborated on, blending settler quilting with native beadwork. James Blackwood, pardoned for his help in exposing the conspiracy, worked as the school's history teacher, ensuring both sides of every story were told. Charlie Rodriguez had married Running Wolf's daughter, their winter wedding celebrating 3, cultures becoming one. Their first child would arrive by summer's end. Maria had expanded her kitchen to feed the growing school, her recipes now famous throughout the territory for their unique fusion of traditions. Marshall Bennett had retired to Two Rivers Junction, serving as an advisor to the new integrated town council. He'd finally found peace, he said, in watching justice bloom instead of merely enforcing law. Sarah. Luke's voice drew her back to the present. Your grandmother's ready to begin. Grace Blackfoot stood at the podium, her dignity drawing all eyes. 1 year ago, truth long buried came to light. Today we plant new seeds of knowledge in soil made rich by justice. Sarah joined her at the podium, unfolding her mother's final letter found in the caves, preserved all those years in a beaded pouch. My dearest Sarah, she read, her voice carrying across the hushed crowd. If you're reading this, then the truth has finally won its long battle with lies. The land remembers, but it also forgives when justice is served. Build something new on this foundation of truth. Let our two peoples flow together like rivers joining, growing stronger in unity than they ever were apart. Luke stepped forward, little Catherine cooing in his arms. Together they unveiled the college's name carved in stone. The Catherine, Winchester Memorial School of Unified Knowledge. The first class begins next week, Grace announced. 30 students, native, settler, and mixed families. All learning together, all teaching each other. Sarah looked out over the crowd. Marshall Bennett sat with Running Wolf, sharing a pipe of peace. Martha Blackwood's grandchildren played with native children, their laughter carrying no trace of old prejudices. The new minister blessed the building in multiple languages, while the town council stood united behind him. Mother would have loved this, Sarah whispered. Luke shifted their daughter to one arm, pulling Sarah close with the other. She saw it coming. All those patterns, all those hidden truths. They were really about hope. Hope, Grace agreed. Joining them. And love. The two forces that can overcome any darkness. As if in response, little Catherine reached for her great-grandmother's beaded necklace, her tiny fingers connecting past to present to future. The spring wind carried the scent of sage and new grass, of possibility and promise. Sarah touched her mother's beadwork one last time, feeling the patterns that had preserved truth through 15 years of winter. But now spring had come to Two Rivers Junction, bringing with it new patterns, new stories, new truths, to be woven into the fabric of a shared future. "The land remembers," she said softly, feeling her second child move within her. "But it also births new beginnings." Luke kissed her temple. "And this is just the start." Above them, eagles soared against the Montana sky, nature's witnesses to a community that had transformed darkness into light, hatred into harmony, and long-buried truths into seeds of lasting change. The truth, like love, had finally found its season to bloom.